Hi, welcome to Salt and Burn This. I'm Sami.
And I'm Valerie.
And this is our Supernatural Rewatch podcast.
Each week, we're going to break down an episode in order with lots of details, so nothing's left out.
And we throw in some personal nuggets and stories and research to mix it up just a little bit.
Because not only are we fans of the show, but like Sam and Dean, we've also had our fill of road trips.
Yeah, but for theater, not for hunting ghosts and demons.
And not in a super sexy muscle car.
Anyway, shall we?
We shall. So since it's been, 6 or 7 years since we've last done our podcast, the opera company I work for finally wisened up and they've brought me on full time.
Yay.
So I can come off the road. I can still gig out if I want to, but I'm on salary. So I don't have to go production to production to production. I don't have to try to like jam pack my schedule. So I am full time. Get some bennies. And they brought me on with the intention of me taking over part of the director of production duties, with the idea that I would take over as director of production in the coming years as the director of production retires.
Yes, I was going to ask. Congratulations, by the way. You did tell me that. You texted me. But it was like briefly.
So
it was briefly, and you were like, guess who they just brought on as like full-time production. And I couldn't tell honestly if you were like, guess who they just brought on.
You'll never guess, those bastards. No, it's like I want to be excited about it, and I am excited about it, but at the same time it's like, yeah, but I was full-time for New York City Opera, so this isn't like finally Valerie is full-time. It's like, no, this is what I do. It's just finally, with this company that they're able to actually bring me on.
And
full-time.
It's nice to have that recognition of, oh, we value you so much that
that they pooled the money for this,
right?
Because if you think about it, opera companies aren't doing back to back shows. Companies will do 3-4 productions a year. So that's 4 months of 4 to 5 months of stage management needed. So when they're not in production, they're still paying me. So that's what I'm thrilled about.
Yes, that's very, very nice. And I'm sure
buy some clothes without holes in them.
Maybe that's why they did it. It's like,
they're just tired of them.
You need some new clothes.
We need to pay her more, but we can't.
Here's a salary. So when you say in the future you'll be director of production, like what do you mean, 10 years?
Oh, less, fewer. Yeah. The director of production is stepping away, so he's slowly stepping away and handing me a lot of, right now I'll take over some of the menial tasks, scheduling, contracts, company management type things, and then learning the more technical side of his job, payroll for the unions and stuff like that, and what our rental properties are as far as sets and costumes and props, and how to rent out the properties, things like that. So I would say within 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Retire, probably fewer. He's just tired of doing it and wants to retire, and I don't blame him. But they just want to bring me in and train me.
Yes.
To do it the way they want it done. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's not necessarily that I need training, it's that to do it the way they do it.
Yeah. Well, that is super, super exciting, and congratulations. Can't think of a person that deserves this more.
Aw, thank you.
No, truly, like, well, especially the big promotion. I mean, salary, you just should have had that, but understandably, like the arts are incredibly underfunded because America thinks it's a nonprofit business. grumble, grumble, grumble.
Grumble, grumble. How do we teach our children to speak with song? How do we teach them to express with arts and drawing and chalk? It's like, everyone's refrigerator is covered with art because that's how we teach our kids to express.
Playing pretend and playing dress up, whatever.
Yes.
I digress. That's a whole nother thing.
So congratulations, Valerie. Thanks, Sammy. That's great. Thank you.
Season 4, Episode 13, After School Special. Sam and Dean go undercover at their old high school, causing them to flash back to when Sam was picked on by the school bully and Dean was popular. Written by Andrew Dabb and Daniel Laughlin, and directed by Adam Kane.
I had mixed. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think those all three of those names sound newbie to me.
Yeah, I did. Every time I say that I don't know them, it turns out that I do know them, but I don't truly know these people. So when I saw the preview of this episode, I got excited because it was like they show you the dean as the gym coach.
Yes.
Scene. I was like, oh my God, I love this episode. But boy, this episode turns dark real quick.
Yeah.
And I ended up like, oh, this was another hard episode to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of felt like they pulled the rug out from under me a little bit. Because it starts out as kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not for the not in the very beginning, but for the brothers, it does. But then it's like, whoop.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because it didn't age well, or that's maybe not the right term, but it hits differently now than it did maybe at that time, or if the writers kind of took a heavy subject and approached it a little bit too lightly, without the proper gravitas that it needed.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe it's a combination of those things, but I also had mixed feelings about it.
Yeah, I mean, they, in the overview, it tells you that they hit on bullying, like Sam being bullied as a kid. And I will admit that bullying back when I was a student, far different than bullying today, just because of the social media alone.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that people can anonymously bully you.
Yeah. So
the number, the amount, the weight of, it's not just being knocked out on the playground, or being pushed down at the bus stop, being slammed into lockers. That stuff all happened. But now it's compounded by somebody filmed it and somebody sent it to the entire high school population. And now every high school saw this video of you getting your pants pulled down. I mean, it's, it's that type of thing. So,
and there's also you can hide behind the mask of anonymity, which I was a victim of right when the internet was starting to be a thing. A girl did try. She emailed me basically and told me that I should kill myself. And she thought she was being anonymous, but at that time, this was in AOL days when
right.
You could, I think that you could change the name of what it looked like when you were sending something. So when you received an email, you could write whatever name popped up in the sender's box or whatever.
Right.
So it showed up as anonymous, but if you clicked a few buttons, you could see the email address that it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And this girl had a very unique last name, and I was from a very, very small town, so it's okay, it's obvious that it was this girl. There's literally nobody else with this last name around. I can't imagine having that around, because when you have that mask of no one knows who's saying this, then it gives you this freedom to say anything and the worst kinds of things.
Yep. And then you get applauded for it because more and more people go, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When my sister was in high school, they had slam books, which was essentially...
Oh, is that kind of like the burn book that's
yes.
in Mean Girls? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so it was a notebook literally being passed around that people would bitch about you and then just pass it around. But yeah, so I think you're right. They glossed over something. The writers glossed over, I think, a very heavy subject, which has affected, I think, all of us at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I was bullied, but I was bullied in the sense of I was short, I had buck teeth, it was that type of stuff. So this episode made me a little raw. Made me a little raw with the bullying.
Also same. It was like it brought a little bit of like PTSD out. And also hurt people, which this episode does show. But I also, unfortunately, kind of did that also. There was a time when I experienced a little bit of power when I moved to a new school and got in with like this crowd that was, I wouldn't say popular, but no one messed with them. But within that crowd, I was the bullied one, but then I outwardly put it out towards everybody else.
Right.
And I was known as a pretty big bitch for a couple of years until I kind of was like, whoa, I stepped back and I looked and I was like, okay, this is not
me,
not who I want to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think I evened out eventually, but
you're fine.
So anyway, now that that's off of our chest.
Yeah. So this is another this is another standalone episode. We don't have the story arc. We don't have the Sam's arc in this one.
Right.
It is a good old salt and burn though. Good old salt and burn episode. So I was like, yay for that.
Yeah, finally. Been a while.
Why did we name our podcast this?
Yeah. Okay, so in our then, it is all about Dad. It is just like he's an asshole. like these clips that they showed, I was like, oh my God, what a terrible father.
Yeah.
Now I understand why the fandom is so like anti-John just from this like 30-second recap.
Yeah.
Leaving the kids alone for days at a motel, kicking Sam out when he just wanted to do something else.
Right. Changing the rules basically, saying if you leave then stay out. And Sam's like, yeah, but you said I could go.
Yeah.
Like you.
And then later he's like, this isn't the life that I ever wanted for you or something like that. So I'm like, make up your goddamn mind, motherfucker.
Yeah. And not only just leaving them, but then like not coming back when he said he was going to come back.
Yeah.
That whole thing. Yeah. John, what a jerk.
Yeah.
Watch out. But the underlining theme though for Dean is watch out for Sammy.
Yes.
Watch out for your brother.
So in our now, we are in a high school in the cafeteria, sometimes the worst time of the day, as evidenced by this scene.
Right. So you've got the cheerleaders and the football players sitting together, or I should say the jocks. I don't know if they're actual football players.
Yeah, I couldn't tell.
And they're harassing one of their other cheerleader friends, and they're like slut shaming her, which is, you don't even know at this point if she was sleeping around, and even if she was, why the slut shaming? The guys are like, we like sluts, and then they're like, oh no, she's a slut, cough, slut, and so this girl who's being slut shamed is like, what are you talking about? And ends up, because they're making fun of her, she goes and sits at another table, it's an almost empty table. There's one other girl sitting there by herself. And the girl who's at the table that she sits down at says, you know what, don't listen to them, tries to comfort this now, harassed cheerleader. And the cheerleader, instead of saying, thanks, or, I'm okay, turns around and does the exact same thing back to this girl and calls her like an ugly fat pig or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, not the lashing out that I thought I was going to see.
Hurt people.
Yep.
Not that that's an excuse, but it is a reason.
But it's a pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pattern.
So I'm assuming it's the next day. In the bathroom, the abused cheerleader girl is crying or has been crying. She's looking at herself in the mirror or redoing her makeup, trying to touch herself up. And the girl that she was mean to from the previous day walks in, and I thought she was gonna. Well, I don't know what I thought she was gonna do, but the cheerleader girl turns around and sees her and says, "Hey, about yesterday, I'm really sorry. And I'm going to say, I think she was, sincere in her apology.
I think so too.
But the girl that she fat shamed isn't having it and slams this girl's head into the mirror and then slams her head into the sink and then drags her body into the bathroom stall and proceeds to basically drown her in the toilet.
Yeah, she swirlies her to death.
Swirlies her to death.
That escalated quickly.
Yes, and pretty gruesome, I would say, because it wasn't just like bam, bam, drown. It was like bloody and violent and slamming, and she's so and just as a heads up, you can't actually drown somebody in a toilet, but unless the toilet's
okay, so up. This scene ends with like some black goo coming out of her eye, and then it's the splash, and we're moving forward. But I got confused when she flushed the toilet and then it proceeded to fill up with water.
Yeah.
But it's like, doesn't flushing it do the opposite unless it's clogged?
Unless it's clogged.
And maybe she pre-clogged it,
Oh, maybe.
Maybe it was a premeditative thing.
Premeditated? Sure.
Premeditative.
Premeditative toilet clogging for the drowning of a cheerleader. Yeah, so the fat shamed girl drowns the slut shamed girl, and as soon as she's done drowning her, like you said, black goo starts to drip out of her eyes.
Yeah.
But not before she says to the drowned girl, you're ugly. And I'm sure she meant like, your soul is, your personality is ugly. You're ugly. Leak black oil.
Right.
So what the heck? What's wrong with these kids?
Yeah. Okay.
So
our map quest for this is Fairfax, Indiana.
Yep.
Which is an unincorporated territory of Indiana.
Yeah, sorry. Yep. Unincorporated township.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Another one of those by the skin of their teeth is real.
Yeah, and are not controlled by any kind of municipality. So
yep.
I guess they're off the. I guess that means they're off the grid. Sounds kind of ideal.
Right now, sure does. Although after watching your scary movie, not so much wanting to be off the grid in a small town. Yeah, not so much with that. Horror in the high desert, indeed.
All right. Here's a few guest star shout outs. So I only kind of wrote down ones that popped out to me or just had something interesting about them. Candace King, who plays Amanda, Teen Dean's little love interest. She is from fellow CW series Vampire Diaries, which I did try to watch for a while, and I just kind of was not really my thing, but she's a pretty big player in that. She's very cute. Brock Kelly, who plays Teen Dean.
Yes.
Probably the most perfect kid that they could ever find to play Teen Dean.
Right?
And
not only in looks, but yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not really familiar with him outside of this episode, but I did see in his the resume that he is also on Days of Our Lives. And is that the one that Jensen was on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So.
And he was also on Pitch Perfect.
Oh, he was, but I didn't remember. I've seen that movie 1,000 times.
His character's name was Howie, but I would have to go back and watch it. And
I think maybe he was just a part of one of those other acapella groups, that don't really get a lot of screen time. We have, I might be saying this right, Kanan Weeba, who plays Barry, the little Barry, Sam's little friend.
Oh,
and I point him out because he's a Supernatural repeat, not once, but 2 other times.
Oh my gosh.
And they've already passed, so we missed him. He played something in Faith, season 1, episode 12's Faith.
And it's
just listed
in the revival? In the 10 revival?
Yeah, he's just listed as boy victim, so I'm not sure what that was. That didn't ring any bells, and I didn't have a chance to go back and relook at it. And in this season's episode 8, Wishful Thinking, he is bully number 1. So
he's one of the kids who's chasing...
Yes, chasing little Todd.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that's a quick turnaround. It's
I know.
Wow. Well, what's amazing is that we didn't notice that. That's
not at all.
that's great casting that we didn't notice that.
And lastly, Colin Ford, who plays young Sam, and we've seen him before, and he will play young Sam for a few more episodes. But I just found out that he plays Jared's younger self in Walker also.
Really?
Yes.
How? Because he's got to be in his 20s now.
Yeah, he is, but he's playing like, you know, because Jared's in his like 30s, 40s or whatever. So he's playing like back in his army days, I think, or something. I don't watch Walker, but I did see like a couple of clips where he's in it. And I saw I looked on his Twitter, and he was like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be rejoining, you know, and going from young Sammy to young Cordell or whatever the Cordell.
Yeah, yeah, that's
that's great. That is so cute.
That's so cute. Well, that's like a lot of folks, a lot of characters went from Supernatural to Walker as family members. So he was also younger. When he was younger, he was in We Bought a Zoo, Sweet Home Alabama.
Oh yeah, his resume is probably the largest out of everybody.
And he was a voice on Family Guy, but I don't know who. I think he had voices.
A lot of them. He was a lot of voices on Family Guy.
Wow. Going places. Places. So I wanted to do some of the call outs that these are probably all Dean mentions because they're movie references. He calls out Revenge of the Nerds. He calls out Heathers. And he calls out 21 Jump Street. Now, the 21 Jump Street, the TV show, not the movies, because the movies weren't made back then.
Yeah. What's the Heathers one?
Martha Dump Truck. He mentions Martha Dump Truck.
And also Dead Poet Society.
Yes, Captain My Captain. He was full of them. He was full of them in this episode. And it's interesting that, you know, Dean, as the adult, was having a good time, I think, in this episode. Dean, as a younger Dean, initially was, but did not end up having such a good time in this episode.
Yeah.
So, moving on. Let's see. I made a note that I can, you know, one of the things that comes up in this episode is Sam and Dean's different experiences of being the new kids in school. Every so often they're the new kids. And it's like, I can totally relate to that because sometimes being the new kid was awesome. And other times being the new kid was terrible, you know? And it's like, sometimes you're invisible. Sometimes you're the center of attention. And both times, like, those could be, you know, both a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I could relate to both of them having to stand in the front of the classroom, you know?
Okay. So we open on April, who was the fat shamed girl from earlier, in a hospital being interviewed by either doctor or nurse Sam.
Just bedside Sam. That's all he has to be.
Super bedside Sam. He was like on peak bedside here because she's like, I don't want to tell anybody. Everyone thinks I'm crazy. And he's like, but I'm not everybody.
Yes.
And then he's got that puppy dog face.
Yep. And he's wearing the whites, you know, the sterile whites. And so she tells bedside Sam that she thinks she was possessed. She says, because I was not in control. I watched myself do this. I tried to stop myself, but I couldn't. I was not in control.
Yeah.
But she didn't, as Sam asks, she didn't smell rotten eggs or sulfur or see black smoke. And she's like, what are you, nuts? You're like, what are you, crazy? Why are you asking me these things?
That was a bold choice to call him crazy after she just told the story of I was possessed. You know?
Right.
And then finding comfort that he actually believes her.
Yeah.
And then she's like, are you crazy?
Teenagers.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say baby is back.
Yes,
baby's
there
back.
she is.
Paula's back. She's outside with Dean, waiting for Sam to hear about.
She makes a big comeback in this episode. She's in it a lot. Speaking of, Sam returns to the car to like relay this all to Dean. Says like, yeah, I think I believe her. It sounds like demonic possession, except there are no usual signs. But you know, maybe we should just check out the school anyway and just see what's there.
Yeah, but Dean's like, "Are you sure? Because kids can be pretty vicious. They don't have to be
They
possessed
can.
to be,
Yeah.
to be assholes."
Yeah, he's not wrong.
But they're like, "All right." But it turns out that this all happened at a high school that at one point in time they both attended.
Yeah.
And it's like, okie dokie.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you can really tell the difference in Jensen's voice, because we just heard like all of these clips from like season 1, you know, when Sam and Dean are talking to each other, and it's
His
like
voice
I'm
is
like Dean, and
pretty
then it goes to like
high.
oh Sammy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really great.
It almost sounds like he's trying too hard. Like that's how much of a difference like
Yeah,
has
that his
happened
voice dropped.
in
Yeah.
3 years. Yeah.
It's a lot of mileage
yeah.
in 3 years.
Yeah. And I thought this transition into the flashback was super groovy. The way they like ride into town and then they just, I don't know, it was a nice smooth clip from present into past.
Yeah,
like dad driving the kids into the town.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. I said the exact same thing. I love it. It's like Sam and Dean pull away and you see the Impala pull away and then you see it pull in and it's not Sam and Dean as driver. It's John, but you don't see John. He's kind of shadowed. So we don't see the actual John. But anyway, and the license plate is different on the Impala. And I couldn't find anything about it. I was just like, it's a license plate. It's just a license plate. So like the car pulls up and like cutie boy Dean and Sam get out of the car. Dean gets out. He's still wearing dad's brown leather jacket. He gets out, walks around to the other side of the car. Sam gets out and Sam is like 4 feet tall.
I know.
And his backpack is as big as he is. He's pulling up his pants because they're a little too big because he's this skinny little kid.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, he's so tiny.
He's so cute.
So cute compared to like Dean, who is a full-blown teenager. I mean, like, almost 18-year-old, maybe even, 19.
I know, yeah, he was a senior. Like when he walks into the class.
Yeah, and Sammy's a freshman, I think.
I think so.
But I just, gosh, the difference in just their looks. I mean, height alone, which is, comedy considering that, Jared towers above everybody. The Chiron says Truman High School, 1997. So it's like, aha, a flashback. But as they're, they wave dad off, dad drives off, and Dean is giving Sam his, his big brother talk, which is, all right, here we go. You got your books, you got your lunch, you got your butterfly knife, you got your weapon, and Sam's like, yeah. He's like, oh, it's another new school. Is this ever going to end?
I know he is not excited about it because he knows like this isn't going to last. He's only going to be there for a few months.
Yep. And whereas Dean doesn't care, no books, no cares, no nothing. He knows he's not going to be there and he doesn't care. Because
even when he goes into the class and is super misogynistic to his teacher, in fact, as good as this guy was at Dean, I did not like good. Dean.
That was not good. That was, you know what? I can't imagine that even Dean at that age would have been calling his teacher sweetie.
I can actually.
Really?
I can see Dean doing that.
Because it's like, where would he have learned that behavior? I don't know.
I don't know. He's raised by TV. He goes like from motel room to motel room. His parents aren't there. His mom is dead, and his dad is never there. So he's just on his own. So he doesn't have good examples to follow from, and especially if you're moving from place to place to place and never forming any close relationships, and you're a cocky teenage kid who thinks he's a hero. He can get away with anything.
Right.
So I think even Sam probably would have been that way had he been a few years older.
Yeah, I just didn't like it. I was like, oh, I don't like this.
I did not like this guy. Did not like him at all. In fact, like even just his facial expression is like, God, you're such a douche.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, and I have thoughts about that at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
The boys have two very different, experiences. Like in Sam's class, say hi to Sam. Hi, Sam. And then in Dean's class, everyone's like, the teacher's like, say hi to Dean, and nobody says anything.
Yeah.
I like that Sam's class is reading The Outsiders. You know, total correlation to, you know, the boys and their life.
Yeah.
And the school play, did you see what play they were doing?
No.
It was written on the classboard. Grease.
Ah!
The school drama department's doing Grease. So Sam in his classroom, you know, he takes a seat and he immediately befriends this kid named Barry. Like, because he's, you know, trying to take a seat and his butterfly knife falls out of his backpack and Barry's like, oh, cool, you know, kind of like, let's be friends.
Yes.
And as soon as you know, Sam settles himself, the kid who's sitting behind Barry like leans behind him and starts like flicking his ear. And of course, Barry does have these like cab door ears. They are just sticking out. I mean, they're super cute. But of course, the kid behind him is flicking them. And Sam sees this and is like, dude, stop. And the kid behind him doing the flicking is like, are you going to make me? You know, type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the bullying begins. And he said, no, he says, you know, you want to take his place? And Sam's like, yeah, try me.
Yeah.
You know, try to do that to me. So it's like little Sam is already so sure of himself, you know, and I liked that. His self-confidence in that role is, you know, already evident. We jump, don't we? This is where we jump back to the future.
Yes, this is now present time.
Present time.
And another kind of cute transition writing wise, because earlier in the car, you know, Dean's like, well, what are our covers? And Sam's like, well, I got some ideas. And then we cut to after the flashback. Sam is a janitor.
Yes.
And Dean is the substitute gym teacher. And the best getup ever.
Did you read that, like, this was one of Jared's favorite costume for Jensen?
Really? No, I didn't.
Yes, he's like, I could not stop laughing. It's like you can see their takes where he's just like, anytime he like actually looks up and down at Jensen, he's laughing. He's absolutely, it was one of their favorite costumes for Jensen. Because the camera starts at Dean's feet and he's wearing white sneakers. He's wearing white knee socks, like jock socks with the like red stripes.
Yeah.
And then naked knees. And then he's wearing these tight polyester gym shorts with a belt.
I didn't notice the belt.
With a white logo shirt tucked in, going all the way up, ready for this, a red sweatband.
Yep.
I mean, and a whistle.
Yes.
He's got the gym whistle.
Have to have the whistle because it makes him their god.
Yes. And he's loving this.
Oh, yeah. And I said a little bit later, it's like, I think in another life, Dean would have been a great gym teacher.
Oh, he embodied every gym teacher I think I've ever had. I've experienced every moment of Dean in gym class.
Oh my God, when he throws that ball at the kid, like full force, I doubled over in laughter. I was like, that is the funniest.
The wind up, the follow through.
Oh my God, you could see the power that he put into that.
I'm like, how? I'm hoping that they like change that ball like a foot from him. He's trying to teach the kids how to play dodgeball, and he's like, there's one rule of dodgeball, and it's dodge. And he just picks up a ball and wails this kid from like 1 foot away.
It like caught me so off guard because it happened so fast. Like if I had anything, if I was drinking anything, it would have been a spit take for me for sure. Because I was just like, oh my God, that just happened.
Well, this is why I wanted to love this episode. Because I'm like, oh, it's going to be this great episode of like fun and hijinks and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's like, the end of the hijinks.
Pretty much. Yeah, within the first 5 minutes.
Yep. But the thing with those dodgeballs, like, did you ever have to play dodgeball with those balls, or was it outlawed by then? Okay.
No, it was not outlawed.
Because it's like those hollow rubber balls that make that sound when you get beamed in the face or whatever. It's like pong.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like it's that same experience of this is your nightmare, but at the same time, when you get somebody out, it's like you're on top of the world and you're like, until you get hit in the head and then you're like, I hate this game.
Yeah. So I think there are a couple things here that maybe date this episode. This is like a few years after the Dodgeball movie came out, which was like a huge hit, and just people were quoting from it and referencing it years afterward.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Even sometimes now, you'll sometimes hear a dip, duck, dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodge. They didn't do it here. It was just dodge, but
right. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Dodge a ball, right? And maybe I'm pulling at some threads here, but when the kid says something about Ms. Boudreaux doesn't let us play dodgeball, and then Dean says she's in Massachusetts getting married right now. Massachusetts allowed gay marriage in 2004. So I wonder if that was a dig at the lady gym teacher being a lesbian.
Gym teacher. Good catch.
Thanks.
Absolutely. I'm going to say absolutely. Oh my gosh. Did you notice, what's his name? Sam. I'm sorry. I'm so worked out over this scene. So Sam walks in and has witnessed like Dean being, Coach Dean and loving every second of it.
Yeah.
And so when Dean sees that Sam is watching, he's like, all right, have at it, kids, go play. And like lets the kids loose to go play dodgeball. And so Sam is talking to Dean about, we didn't find anything, or what did we find? And of course, how much Dean loves that whistle. The kid who raised his hand and was like, Mrs. So-and-so doesn't let us play, gets hit in the face with a ball. It ends up with a bloody nose. And if you watched Sam, he totally flinches. He's like, oh, and really? Dean just kind of looks. He's like, walk it off, sport. Way to hustle. It's like, again, the difference between the brothers. Sam is like all empathetic, like, oh man, that was a bad hit. And Dean's like, no, you're fine. Good game, walk it off. So Sam basically says, there's nothing here.
Yeah,
couldn't find anything.
So maybe they should go, but after lunch, because it's Sloppy Joe Day.
Sloppy Joe, sloppy Joe. So next we see we're in home ec. This is not going to end well for anybody, as we can all see. There's a jock kid,
especially when we go from the brothers saying, oh, the's nothing here, there's fine.
Nothing here. Home ec class where the
and
kids
then we
are
cut to food processors.
Food processing and blendering of what was it? I
don't know, it's like green peppers or celery, some kind of vegetable
or something. So there's a jock kid who's like bullying his lab partner for, hey, I need your notes again, or didn't you do my homework for me? And the smart kid is like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give you my notes this time. And the jock's like, well, what are you going to do about it if I, make you give it to me?
Yeah, he threatens him like, I'm going to put my fist through your throat if you don't. And this nerdy guy who's kind of been like a little spacing out, and obviously doesn't talk this way usually because jock guy is like caught off guard by his responses. Right. He's like, oh, this fist, takes it and then shoves it into the food processor where it ends up being like completely chopped up.
Splatter, 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 just like the garbage disposal. We all saw it coming. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But like immediately though, the kid who like jammed the jock's hand into the blender like passes out. He's just like on the floor.
Yeah. Sam's there to catch it just right in time.
Yeah. While the rest of the class runs screaming out of the room, and the teacher like wrapped up the mangled kid hands and like hustles everybody out of the classroom. And so Sam sees this and rushes to him just in time to see that black oily goo. And doesn't drip out of the kid's eye, it dripped out of his ear this time.
Yep.
It's like, All right, so I guess we're sticking around. So the next thing we see is Sam walking around with the EMF detector, like, we're going to find something. But there's no EMF to find. There's nothing there.
Yep. Dean meets up with him in a bright red tracksuit, coming from a nonviolence assembly.
Sorry, I just remember the assemblies. I just remember getting called into assembly.
Did you have DARE? DARE?
Yeah.
Dare to keep a kid off drugs. Yep. The lion. And I had to go through DARE twice because I went to a few different schools. And one school they did it in 5th grade. And then the next school I went to, they did it in 6th grade. You're only supposed to do it once, so it gets like a one-time shot. But because of where my moves lined up, I had to do it twice in a row.
Yeah.
It's like So this is not demonic possession, but ghostly possession, as evidenced by the ectoplasm, which is a rare thing, but it can happen if a spirit is angry enough. However, they're not finding any EMF, so like, what's the deal? Where did this ghost die? Let's see if we can find anybody that's died on campus and where they died, and bleep bloop blop.
Yep.
Dean did find that out already. He was like a couple steps ahead of Sam, actually. Went digging through the principal's office and found a couple things. One, which cheerleaders are illegal, which gross. Did not like that. Did not like that.
No.
Even if I think like, okay, these kids are in their 20s, that's still not.
No.
Okay.
We don't go looking for that.
No.
That's gross. That's gross.
There are plenty of women in the world who are your age and be well beyond the legal limit, and not
and more than willing.
Yeah.
And more than willing.
And not ones who are in high school who just happen to be 18. Yeah. Gross.
There was, when I first started watching this show, this was one of the reasons why I didn't like the show. Is some of the Deanism, some of the horn dogness of Dean. It's like, I love the characters, I love the brothers, but it's like, if I could erase something from his character, it would be this.
Yeah.
Because I
just cut it down to like a quarter of amount, just because it was so much, and then like, but it was so much and so inappropriate.
Yeah.
But besides the inappropriateness, he also found that there was a suicide back in 98 in the girls' bathroom, which is where the first murder happened. And unfortunately, it was little Barry, Sam's friend.
Yeah. And Sam reveals that he knew Barry when he was a kid, which takes us to our next flashback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Sam helping Barry as Barry's being bullied. And it's this time it's in the hallway where all the kids are seeing Barry get his books like knocked out of his hands, and typical. At the same time, Dean is in the janitor's closet, janitor's closet, macking with the pretty blonde girl that he met in his homeroom class.
Mm-hmm.
And she's surprised that Dean, that he lives in a hotel, that his parents are there, that he doesn't have a curfew. And instead of thinking it's cool, because Dean thinks it's cool, he thinks that, the kids all think he's cool because of this. She's like, no, don't you miss having your family around?
Yeah.
Not everybody feels that their parents are a restriction on their lives, or that their parents aren't necessary in their lives. And so I think this is maybe the first girl who has said, you may be the bad boy, so to speak, but, what do you mean you don't have any rules or guidance or structure?
Yeah. Yeah. She was like, it was like she was drawn in by his like smooth bad boyness until she wasn't. She was just like, ooh, this is kind of sexy. But then it was like, oh, it's a little bit too much. It's kind of weird that you live in a motel and like don't really have parents around ever. But I don't know, you're still kind of sexy. So,
yeah. I mean, she makes a good point, though. She's like, well, don't you miss your dad?
Yeah.
Don't you miss, that's a great question.
Yeah. That
don't
maybe he has not ever been asked.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to be upset because you're always being left behind, but one thing that's never addressed is, do you miss your dad in your life? Having that personality. You don't have to always like your parents. So back in the hallway, it turns out the bully's name is Dirk. And Dirk, the ear flicker, is punishing Sam for defending Barry. And but Dirk gets caught like punching Sam. And so he gets in trouble by the teachers. So that's never a good thing when the bully gets caught, because then the bully blames the person that he was beating up for, I got caught because I was beating you up.
Yeah. Yeah. But also it should be noted that Sam stayed down. Like, he gets punched to the ground by this guy and he kind of stays down.
Yeah.
And I think even not knowing that they've been like trained or whatever, I think we could say that he could have easily taken that guy and chose not to.
Yep. But I think yeah, you're right. You can kind of see that it was a calculated, move on Sam's part.
Yeah.
Yep. So going from Sam then to Sam now, Sam and Dean have found Barry's adult remains, his teenage remains, and they salt and burn Barry's remains. And Sam's a little, he's like, oh, I knew this kid, and now I'm salting and burning his bones.
Yeah, and I think I wrote that he was super bummed, but I think it's a lot of guilt that he's taking on, because I think maybe he feels, oh, if I would have stayed, maybe he wouldn't have done this, because they did have a connection, and I think Barry did feel protected by Sam, especially as we'll see by the end of the episode, that he had like a protector, or at least
a friend,
somebody that he connected with. Yeah. Because earlier in this flashback, Barry's like, whatever, I'll be out of here in 3 years and going to vet school because animals are way better than people.
Yeah. So guilt, but also, they're again looking at his life. What is my life? My life is salting and burning, my friend's bones.
Yeah.
So
and Dean tries to comfort him by saying, listen, he had like a whole host of problems. He was like on all these medications, and they would not have been solved by you being there.
Yeah.
Then he kind of switches it. He's like, I don't understand why you're so connected to this school, especially after what happened to you. This place was terrible.
Yeah. And so now we have to go, what happened? What happened? And flashback. Flashback. Yeah. So Sam is actually standing up for himself with Dean. So young Sam and young Dean are talking.
Yeah.
And Sam is standing up for himself, saying, because clearly Dean heard about the fight in the hallway, and Dean is saying, I'll rip his lungs out, and Sam's like, I don't need you to fight my battles for me. I can do this on my own. What if Dad were here? I was like, I don't need this.
Yeah, it's like, so well, he isn't here, so I can't answer this question.
That still isn't here.
Yes, that's another thing. Is like, I don't know how long they've been there at this point, but it's way longer than they anticipated to be. And then he called like earlier and said, oh, it's going to be at least another week. So
so
it went from, oh, we'll be here for a couple of weeks to I don't know how long they were there. Let's say a month, 2 months. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Dean still doesn't have any books, but
right.
So he's still not back, and the boys still have to figure things out on their own. Without him.
But Dean does say, and this is where we see that Sammy could have fought Dirk, because Dean is just like, you could have taken him. Are you kidding me? Like, we got skills, and Sam's like, I didn't want to be the freak. I just want to go like the normal.
And there's that word. Didn't want to be the freak.
Didn't want to be a freak. Because Dirk, I think, also calls him that.
Yeah.
Is it earlier or later? I don't know. Dirk calls him it at some point. But then, he changes the subject and he says something, well, at least you got Amanda. Dean's like, she wants me to meet her parents. That's not a good idea. And he's not wrong.
I don't do good with parents. Right. So back in English class, Sam's teacher has taken an interest in Sam's writing and calls him, to stay after class for a couple minutes, and is like, you're not in trouble, but this was supposed to be this writing assignment was supposed to be nonfiction, and so you wrote about your family killing werewolves, and he's like, you sure this isn't nonfiction? And Sam's like, oh, but the teacher at least sees some, promise in how he wrote about his family and how he described his family members and, their relationships and stuff, and encourages Sam to, if that's what you want to do, if you want to write, you should write. I'm not going to fail you for, not doing the assignment properly. You still did a really good paper. So, good job, boyo.
Yeah, because Sammy is also, he is like Dean in the way that he's like, I'm only going to be here a couple of months. So, I mean, you can fail me if you want. It's really not going to make a difference, unfortunately. And then Mr. Wyatt is like, no, I'm not going to fail you. And then he asks Sammy a question that he's never been asked before, which is, do you even want to go through and like follow in the family footsteps?
Right. Yeah. Does that make you happy? Yeah.
And that's important because then Sammy, even young little Sammy, is just like, I have never been asked that question before. But no, like, hell no, I don't want to do this.
I don't want to do this. Yeah. So I have a dumb question. Wasn't the first werewolf episode of Supernatural, wasn't that their first werewolf? It may not have been John's, but I think it was their first werewolf encounter. So maybe Sammy was writing about John's werewolf encounter.
Maybe. I'm totally blanking on the chick that we liked. Madison.
The one that he had to kill. Yeah. Because I thought that was their first werewolf encounter.
I'm not positive if it was their first werewolf or not. But probably, I feel like every monster that they have encountered in the show has been like, this is the first time that we've ever seen this. Which now that you think about it, kind of seems silly since they've been doing this for so long.
Terrible hunters.
Yeah.
We're back in the now, and Sam has some unfinished business and is back at the school because they think that, they've salt and burned the bones. It's time to leave town. But before they do, Sam wants to go and try to find his writing teacher.
He wants to have his "Oh, Captain, my Captain" moment with Mr. Wyatt.
Yep. But as he's about to go into that teacher's classroom, a student behind him in the hallway, lone student in an empty hallway, is like, hey, can you tell me how to get to the classroom, blah, blah, blah. And not thinking anything of it, Sam seems to remember how to get around all these classrooms after all these years. And, gives instructions. Yes, you get to room 305. You go down this hall, take a left, and that's the third door on your right. I couldn't tell you,
Don't even remember what my high school looks like on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember, like, our apartment number in New York, and that was just, like, 2 years ago.
2A.
So, and just as Sam turns back around after giving instructions, the student behind him is like, thanks, Sam. Boy, you've sure gotten taller.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam turns around and is like, Qua? A, how do you know my name? And B, what?
Yeah.
And just as he has that look of, like, what on his face, the student, like, takes out a knife and tries to stab him.
Does stab him.
Does stab him. Does stab him.
Yeah, she stabs him with, it's like a screwdriver or something. It's like something really sharp and pointy. I don't know if it was a knife,
Sam.
but stabs in the chest, kicks him in the beanbag, and then punches him up like so hard that he like flies across the room.
Right.
And when she's like walking towards him menacingly, she's got like black goo leaking out of her mouth this time. So now we have like see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. But it's slow enough that he has time to like pour some salt into his hand, and then he like force feeds it into the mouth of the student, which expels the ghost out of her.
Like explodes this ghost out of her.
That was a pretty cool effect. That
was pretty cool. But I also liked the fact that Sam continues to hold the girl, like she collapses in his arms, and he actually kind of cradles and caresses her, not caresses in a sick way, but like holds her in a caring way. Like, oh my gosh, this poor girl was just possessed by a ghost. Yeah. As opposed to this bitch just stabbed me and
kicked me in the balls.
Yeah, I thought it was just sweet to see, that's Sam. He's the protective side. He's the protector.
Yeah.
So clearly not Barry if they burned his bones. So this ghost is not Barry. Yeah. So what else is going on?
Right. Which they try to figure out in this next shot, which is a sunset baby shot next to a bridge, pulling liquor out of a cooler.
The green cooler, which becomes canon.
Dean gives Sam a cold whiskey bottle to put on his beanbag. And he makes kind of like the same threats that he did like 10 years ago, about the kid who beat him up. Yeah.
The exact same words. I'll rip his lungs out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But because this ghost knew his name, it's definitely personal. What did they miss? What's going on? It's not Barry. Right. And when Dean checks like the roster of things, he notices, they're all on the same bus.
Yeah, all 3 of these possessed kids rode the same bus. How did we forget? How did we not see this?
Yeah.
So maybe the bus is haunted.
Yeah.
And then, so this is a new like ghost lore at this point that ghosts aren't just trapped in the place, like they're not trapped haunting the place where they died or where their body ended up. It's apparently ghosts can jump bodies and then possess.
Yeah.
You know,
if they have the strength to possess somebody, maybe they can travel as far as that possessed person will allow them to, until they're expelled, and then they're kind of like bounced back to their starting point.
They can jump body to body. So that's kind of a new thing. And Mimbo, Sam, and Dean are like, well, that's new. All right. You know,
great.
It's not out of the realm of possibilities, but great. This is something new we got to deal with.
This was present day Dean that I thought was being a douchebag. And I didn't know that the Martha dump truck was a reference to Heathers, because I had not seen Heathers. But he says Martha dump truck, Revenge of the Nerds, and Hello Kitty, which I did not. I was just racist. Like, wow, Dean, this is.
Yeah. Well, Martha dump truck being the chubby girl.
Yeah, even
you know, and then
with or without Kitty, the reference to a movie. Yeah, it's just still like a mean thing to say about somebody. Martha
and Revenge of the Nerds. I mean, it was
Revenge of the Nerds. Okay, whatever.
It was stereotypes of each of the characters.
The Hello Kitty thing like really made me go, whoa, that was distasteful. Not good.
Well. So they go and check out the school bus that the kids rode, and there is EMF. They do find EMF on the school bus, and Dean checks out the glove box, and they check out the bus driver, and it looks like it's a new driver, or at least a newly licensed bus driver, and his name's Dirk McGregor Sr. It's Dirk's dad.
Yeah, yet another person that Sammy knew.
And Dean's like, who don't you know? You know, so clearly, again, different experiences. Sam remembers he actually made relationships in the school. Dean made one, and
I guess forgot about it.
Yep, and he blew it at the same time.
He blew it, yeah. So then we cut back to another flashback, where Dirk starts up yet another fight with Sam and Barry, but this time after a lot of prodding, Sam does fight back. You know, he does stand up and say, you know what? No,
we're not a lose Chester.
Yeah.
What do you want, lose Chester?
Yeah. And absolutely whips the living shit out of Dirk.
Unleashes on him.
I have to say, I guess just because, you know, maybe you can relate, being a small person myself, it was just satisfying to see this tiny little kid beat the ever-loving shit out of this holy guy,
and have the big kid who's been using his weight and size to his advantage look shocked and completely dumbfounded, like unable to even fight back. It wasn't just like, oh no, you didn't. It was just he's never been hit back before.
Yeah, and probably never expected little, as he said, midget Sam Winchester to do this.
So not only to hit back, but hurt him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And in the end, instead of like kicking sand in his face when he was done, he calls him Dirk the Jerk. And of course, all the kids who are watching this fight, who are like, you know, fight, now turn into, Dirk the Jerk. Dirk the Jerk.
Yeah,
so now
like,
the bully.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. We never thought of that before.
So now the bully has a nickname, which, you know, good.
Yeah, at this point you're like, yeah, you deserve that.
Yeah, there's worse things that, you know, but okay, it's a TV show, so they can't really go into it. So Dirk the Jerk runs off butthurt, so to speak. And now we're in the now.
Yeah. And the boys are at Dirk Sr.'s house, visiting as old friends of Dirk Jr., which his dad is like, I don't really remember him having a lot of friends. Because he had a lot of trouble in school. You know, he was picked on a lot. He was bullied. He was poor. You know, kids really grabbed onto that. His mother died when he was 13 after he like really took care of him, and he never really talked about her.
Yeah, he watched his mother get sick and suffer and die.
Yeah.
He got picked on. Kids had a mean nickname for him. Whoops.
Dirk the Jerk. And he ended up turning to alcohol and drugs, and then just
died.
It's assumed he eventually overdosed.
Yeah. And it's like, part of me is like, while I feel bad, Dirk was angry and a jerk before Sam came along.
He was, but maybe he was angry and maybe they were calling him poor and dirty and all of those names before Sam came along, that's why he was a bully. But he was just so big and like, I guess, exuded such jerkness that no one like really wanted to mess with him. But then Sam beating him up like as a spectacle, like with an audience, then it was just like, oh, he's not as invincible as we all thought.
Right. I think the reason I brought that up is because Sam takes this burden on.
Yeah.
Like immediately, really as soon as Dirk Sr. says, oh, and he had a nickname, he was bullied and he, the kids had a mean nickname for him. You totally see Sam be like, oh my gosh, this is all my fault. He doesn't say it, but you see it in his body language. So the reason I pointed out that, Dirk was a bully before Sam came along is like, I feel like Sam took on too much.
He did, especially with Barry too. He's just like, oh God, my little friend Barry, he didn't have any friends after I left. If I was there, maybe he wouldn't have killed himself. And then Dirk, maybe if I had not beat him up like I initially wanted to do, maybe he would not have, killed himself or overdosed or, went that direction.
Right. It's like, Sam. Okay. So as it turns out, Dirk was cremated, but Dad did keep a lock of his hair.
I'm laughing because of the way that Dean like approached this whole thing.
Oh yeah,
it's like, oh,
straightforward.
Oh, Dean.
So where do you keep that?
It's like, oh, we want to pay our respects. Where is his grave? Oh, did you cremate all of him?
No, I kept a lock of his hair. No,
I guess it paid off, because he did tell them. It's like, well, no, actually, but it was just like, oh God.
Blurt. Yes. I wish I had a nickname for like Dean and his blurting, straightforwardness. So later that night, we see the school bus. We assume it's the Dirk Senior's school bus. Coming back from, I'm assuming a sporting event. It's got a sports ball team and coaches on the bus, and they're getting driven back down these dark, smoky country roads, foggy country roads. And the bus hits spike strips or something, blows out its tires and pulls off onto the side of the road.
Yes. And we know that the bus driver is possessed because we see some black goo leaking out from somewhere. I think it was his nose or something.
Oh, yeah.
So but they just like, thanks for substituting, Mr. Gregor. And he was just like, no problem.
I'll drive the bus for you.
Yes.
Yeah. So the bus, flat tires, pulls off on the side of the road, and up pup, Dean and Sam with the rock salt shotgun. And Sam is calling out for Dirk. And it's the bus driver guy who responds. He's like, oh, it's you, Sam, type of thing. And behind him, Dean pops up and grabs him and wraps him up in salt-soaked rope, I think.
That is what they said. Yes, the rope has been soaked in salt water, so he cannot escape. It's a foolproof plan.
Of course. And of course, everybody on the bus is looking out the window watching this. They're like, hey, what's going on?
Oh my God. I have words about these reaction or lack of reaction from these kids. But Dean goes into the bus to look for the lock of hair, which Dirk Sr. had said it's in his dashboard in his Bible. Cannot find the lock of hair. And then the possessed guy is like, it's somewhere you will never find it. You guys are so evil. You'll get what you deserve. What did I say?
Hate you jocks. I hate you popular kids.
I said, it's like, Dirk's ghost does you meddling kids, but more in the tone of you evil sons of bitches. And then Sam retorts back with the title
Bedside
appropriate.
Sam. Yeah.
Bedside Sam, PSA, you know, it gets better, which I meant to look up like when that campaign started, but
I can. Oh, are you talking about The More You Know, or are you talking about
it gets
after
better.
school specials? Oh
no, I'm talking about it. The I think it's the Trevor Project that it gets better.
Oh, it gets
you know
better.
that phrase, it gets better, because he says word for word, it gets better.
It gets better.
And I don't know when that was, and I forgot to look it up. But it's all of those things combined. It gets better. The More You Know, after school special, PSA, this is your brain on drugs. It's all of that like wrapped into one little Sam monologue here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, this is, you know, kids are mean in high school, but once you get past that, it gets better.
Yeah, they're not evil. They're just scared. You know, we all were.
Which doesn't really hold true now, as we discussed earlier.
Just discussed, right. And so in the process of all this proselytizing, Dirk breaks free of the, you know, impenetrable plan of the salted ropes, and lunges for Sam, who then shoots him twice in the chest with the assault shotgun, startling Dean.
Yeah.
I think Dean was taken aback by how quickly Sam decided to shoot
right.
to shoot Dirk. And at the same time, from behind, Sam is then grabbed by one of the jocks, who clearly Dirk has left the body of the shot.
Yeah, it's like the rock salt expelled him, and then you see a kid on the bus like kind of jolt a little bit, and then some black goo comes from somewhere, who then comes off the bus and attacks Sam. And Dean and still attacks Sam despite being shot by rock salt like 3 times by Dean. And Sam's just like, forget the shooting, just find this goddamn hair.
right. So he's like, he's being pounded by this jock, and he's like, go find the hair.
Yes.
So Dean eventually does find it, and burns it. And it's this cool blue flame, and it burns. And then as he's burning it, Dirk's ghost poofs out of, you know, the jock guy and burns up, and, you know, gone. You know, big scream, and it poofs out. Good effects. I really liked these effects. These were pretty cool.
They were simple but effective.
Yep. So the ghost light burns out, and the jock, now free of the ghost, collapses flat onto Sam, who's now crushed underneath this guy. And Dean gets to have his, you know, moment of, hey, look, he's going full cowgirl on you, which is, of course, what the cheerleader was accused of doing in the beginning of the episode.
Cowgirl.
Reverse cowgirl. Yeah. No, not that there's anything wrong with either of those.
No. There is literally zero reaction from anybody on the bus to these fights, the
shotgun
gunshots.
Yeah, like basically their bus driver getting murdered on the side of the road. Nope.
They're all just like, oh, what's going on? Maybe they were making fun of jocks for being stupid. I don't know.
I don't know. Or maybe they're just like, screw it, we can't waste time filming this.
That's probably what it was. There was a lot of taking things with a grain of glossing over, taking things with a grain of salt, or God, what's that term? We use it in theater all the time.
Schadenfreude.
No. God, it's gonna come to me like tomorrow. It's just like you just kind of have to, you know, use your imagination to fill in the blanks of things.
Oh, okay. You know, kind of like, why did we just break into song? You know, everybody knows the words.
Yeah.
So while we're thinking about that, we flash back to high school.
Yeah, this is our little epilogue flashback.
Yeah. So Dean's back in the janitor's closet, macking with a different girl this time.
Yeah, cute brunette.
Yep. And door opens, and it's
Amanda,
the ex.
Ex-girlfriend.
Now ex-girlfriend. And he's like, you know, hey, don't be mad. And she's like, I'm not mad. You know, I'm disappointed that this is what you want.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just disappointed that
she reads him pretty filthy. She's like, you know, like this whole like bad boy front that you put on, or your cool act is literally just an act. Yeah, and really you're just like a sad, lonely little kid, and I feel sorry for you.
Yep. And of course, this is one of the worst moments for me in my adoration of this character of Dean, because he says his retort to, you're just a sad little kid, basically. I feel sorry for you. He's like, don't feel sorry for me. I'm a hero. I save people, which is what no hero has ever said.
Yep.
And I'm like, how dare the writers do this to Dean, to my Dean? I'm like, how do we go from the hero we know now, the guy who sold his life for a year to save his brothers, he sold himself to hell, to him standing in a janitor's closet in high school, being like, I'm a hero, I save people.
Because it happened the opposite way.
I know.
It's 10 years in the past, and it's an 18-year-old stupid kid with a lot of hubris.
It just hurt me to watch that. It really did.
So there was this guy I dated. This is not exactly the same thing, but kind of. This guy I dated who was talented. He was a good singer. He was a good actor. He's, got nominated for like awards and got pretty far up in competitions. And he used to brag about how humble he was. And I could never quite, I didn't know how to say
point it out to him.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, an actual humble person would not
say
they're humble or like put it at the top of their resume or, say that's like a good quality about themselves.
Wow. Yeah. So we leave Dean being all, whiny.
Yeah, here's mouth. This is so interesting because at the beginning, everyone's like, oh man, this guy is so cool. Even little Barry, Sam's friend, is like, oh my God, that's your brother.
That your brother?
He's so cool.
Yeah.
And here it's like it's totally flipped. Like Dean is like walking through the halls, like after he's proclaimed out loud that he's a hero, and he just gets little like rolled-eyed reactions or like cold shoulders from like all the people who have heard and been like, oh my God, this like whiny, like annoying guy is like saying he's a hero. That's lame. And Sami is getting high fives all over the place for finally standing up to this bully guy.
Way to go, Winchester! Yeah. And he's not eating it up. He's smiling. He's enjoying.
I think he's like, oh, this is new. This is a change. Yeah, I like that. I could get used to this.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, all right, adjusts his giant backpack. Pulls up his little pants, and And that's when Dean's phone rings, and it's Dad. Finally, Dad's ready to come and get them. So the Impala pulls up out front of the school. We still don't see John driving. Sami waves goodbye. He sees Barry up in one of the classrooms, kind of forlornly like, okay, bye. Have a good life.
I know.
And they get in the car, and the Impala drives the Winchesters away.
Yep.
Off to their next hotel, their next high school. And that drives us into the now, with Sam goes back to that high school.
Yes, he finally does get to have his "Oh, Captain, my Captain" moment with Mr. Wyatt.
With Mr. Wyatt, without getting stabbed by a lone student. And he gets to, he's like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but, I was a student in your class, and you said some really encouraging things to me. You supported me, and you made a difference in my life. And the teacher's like, oh, I did, and he's like, oh, yeah, I remember you. So did you go on to be, the writer or the whatever? Yeah. And Sam's like, no. No. And the teacher's like, well, at least as long as you're happy. And Sam's like,
yeah.
Are
you happy?
Are you happy?
He asks, are you happy? And there's no answer from Sam. It just goes straight to credits. Sam says, you took an interest in me when no one else did, which I think is very telling, especially coming from this recap of this episode of Dad saying the things that he did and the relationship that he had with John. If he was 14, 15, whatever age you are, if he's freshman, sophomore, I don't know, but at that age, for someone to say, oh, someone finally took an interest in me,
I literally wrote, well, damn. That's how I ended my notes, was, well, damn. So I had a hard time with this episode.
Yeah, because we went from like dodge, dip, duck, dive, and dodged, and knee socks to
my hero being not a hero.
Yeah.
And Sam being still once again carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and as a 14-year-old carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And just the, again, the story of bullying, which, that's a whole nother, after school special. Which, by the way, those started in 1972, the after school specials, which were actual, it was ABC programming that anytime there was it was like teenage angst issues that mostly centered around high school and middle school, they would create these little, dramas that they put them on. They would preempt other programming, which is why it was a special.
Yeah.
And they would tell the schools that they were going to be airing it. And so the schools would tell the students that there was an after school special that was going to be played at a certain time, and that, go home after school and you guys should watch this after school special. And I remember those. I remember getting the notices that there was going to be an after school special on. It's like, oh boy, I get permission. I get to watch TV because this is an after school special. It's supposed to be educational. But they were only on like twice a year, so it wasn't like something that happened a lot. Yeah.
I mean, I think that they, when I was in school, they would show them in class. They were like taped, oh, you should watch this thing. But I think by that time, I think they just turned into those little PSA commercials, like the, this is your brain and there's an egg, and this is your brain on drugs, smash.
Yeah. It was just an excuse for substitute teachers to play something so that they wouldn't have to, do any schoolwork. Like was it lesson plans? I'm just gonna show them the after school special on shoplifting. Yeah. But yeah, so I had a hard time with this episode. It fooled me.
Yeah, it fooled me. It brought a lot of bad memories. It brought some unresolved trauma. I mean, I will forever have the gym shorts, Dean in his gym shorts and that poor kid getting wailed, because we've all had that. We've all been the person who got hit that hard with those stupid dodgeballs. Yeah.
Always picked last for dodgeball, by the way.
I was picked last for everything.
Everything.
Literally everything. I was picked last. It's like such a terrible feeling.
It's a terrible feeling. But what's funny is being small in dodgeball, guess what? Smaller target.
That's true.
They always thought you were going to be like slower just because you were smaller.
Yeah, or like not athletic, which was my problem. Yeah. But no, you're right. It's harder to there's less mass to aim for.
Exactly. That's all I have for this episode. I'm kind of, when I got to the end of it, I was like, okay, I want to get back into the arc again. I want to find out what's going on with
I do
Sam.
too. However, I do want to say, and I had forgotten to mention this a little while ago, and I meant to. In this episode, both past and present Dean were kind of a dick.
Yeah. And
if we go back to Yellow Fever, when Dean was affected by that ghost virus, because it targets dicks, and then you said that Eric Kripke put out a thing that Dean is not a dick. This, plus the fact that when he was in hell, he was torturing other people, have made me think not at his core that he's a dick, but that's why that ghost sickness targeted him, and that there are parts of him that are dick-ish.
Yeah, I would say that, except that he wasn't a dick to anybody in particular in this episode.
No, not to anybody. But well, I mean, I don't know. I would say he was a dick to his teacher, honestly.
But see, I just saw that as just being cocky, condescending.
But I really didn't like the.
It's like he wanted to be
sweetheart and the sugar, but I don't know. But again, that's like 18-year-old kid, and I don't know if you can really hold anybody to what they did when they were 18.
Right.
But in his present day, like calling these kids names like Martha Dumptruck and Hello Kitty.
Yeah, that's bad.
And
but with his references, his TV references, you hit it on the head. You said he grew up watching TV. That's how he knows people, and that's how he relates to people, is how characters were treated on these shows. I mean, did you ever see the Goonies, the movie? I mean, they've got a kid on there who they make fun of because he's chubby and he has to do the truffle shuffle.
Yeah, the truffle shuffle.
We all thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's not funny. I mean,
you look back and you're like, oh, I feel bad that I thought that was funny, but.
Right. But
it is. You're a product of your time sometimes.
Yeah, you can't hold yourself responsible.
Hindsight is always 20/20. But this ghost sickness didn't count for that in Yellow Fever. They were like talking about events that had happened way, 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 way in the past. And I'm not saying that Dean is a dick, but sometimes he can. Well,
you can see, you could write this down as, this is why the ghost chose him.
Yeah,
because the ghost thought he was being a dick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
I also think I want to chalk this up to these writers who are new. Now, maybe they are on the writing team as a whole, but I don't know. It didn't feel like true Dean behavior to me.
Yeah.
Fully fleshed in general. And I do think a lot of it you just have to just accept. It's TV magic. I'm sure cut for time. You're only allowed 40 minutes.
I did not like these revelations. Like, this is something about Dean I didn't know, and I didn't want to know. Yeah. I could have gone on. I could deal with his, porn watching, magic finger loving stuff.
Which apparently he lived when he was 18 also.
Yes.
Okay, so let's put a pin on this episode, and we will move forward into the next one, which is sex and violence.
I know. Oh, God. Okay.
So we'll see how that one goes.
School special.
Yeah.
Sex and violence. PSA, the more you know. It gets better. Sex and violence. I don't know anything about this episode. I didn't look at it. I don't remember it. So this will be an all new for me.
Watched like the first 5 minutes of it. And then I read like the little description. I'm like, oh yeah, I do kind of remember.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I kind of remember this. So one of the few from season 4 that I'm like, oh yeah.
See, but last time I did that, I was completely wrong. So, I thought this was going to be a fun episode, and all it gave me was Jensen in gym shorts. So this is the second time we've seen his legs for a guy who says he doesn't wear shorts. Right. Yep. We've now seen his knees twice.
Just a note. I think we will probably be going to a bi-weekly schedule for a little while because our lives are getting a little hectic and busy. We'll do as much as we can, but just be prepared for that. Thank you all for for being patient with us while we went through this little hiccup, another one.
Yeah.
Please subscribe to us wherever you can find podcasts. That's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., etc. If you could also leave us a review anywhere that you can leave a review, that would be great, as long as it's a positive one. You can also follow us on social media. We are at Salt and Burn This everywhere. So if you could share us to other people, that would help grow our little audience too, which would be a big help. I think that's something we really need to make a focus on is growing this little thing so we can continue to be more consistent in our content creation here. It would be
I want to shout out for folks who actually have shared us a number of times, and the Hoppy Mommy on Twitter, Beard Owl Podcast. They've done a lot of sharing and retweeting of our stuff. So I just wanted to say thanks.
Yeah, thanks. That. And we will see you next time for Sex and Violence, which may or may not be as uplifting as this one is. I don't know. We'll see. You'll have to listen to find out. Okay. We will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.